Hi guys, this is SDJRSNF88 speaking with the 7th update on the WW1 Trench Railway project. And as you can see, the progress is coming on in leaps and bounds and a few more major milestones have been made. So without further ado, let's get into the update. So the first and most noticeable change to the layout is the addition of lighting. And as you can see, the layout is now lit by these two lovely mounted lights, which light the whole scenic area of the layout. Now, I was looking for lighting. My initial idea was to have lighting on the layout sort of from the start. I've not done this on any other layout, so it was a real sort of first for me. And I was originally looking at posable bendy lamps with the clamp on the end, which I was just going to simply clamp on top of the back scene there. So I went around to IKEA of all places. I picked up a number of good items there which will help out with the layout, which we'll come on to in future updates. But the lighting was one of the main things I was looking for in there because they have a good range of different lights and fixtures and fittings. And sure enough, I came across the bendy posable lights that I wanted. But then just next to them was the wall-mounted light section, and sure enough, there were these two lights. And as soon as I saw them on display, I thought they would be absolutely perfect for what I need. As you can see, they simply screw directly on top of the back scene there on the bracket. They have this lovely sort of metal bracket that holds them to the back scene there and raises the light, so the light is actually higher than where it's actually mounted on the layout, so it gives it a bit more height as well and sort of reveals more of the back scene, which is absolutely perfect. The lights themselves are adjustable. You can roll them up and down, so I can roll them and make them look towards the back scene a bit more, or I can roll them up and sort of have them facing away from the layout, which is a bit pointless really, as you don't want to get in your sort of viewer's eyes that are people that are looking at the layout. But at the moment they're looking directly down. The camera does give the effect that they are sort of looking towards the camera. They're actually not. They're LEDs, so cameras pick them up quite well. But I do plan to, I have a solution for stopping this happening. I've got this L-shaped bit of timber that will rest along the whole top of the layout, which will go along, which are basically attached to the top of the lights there on top of them. And it will block out the light from, sort of hitting the viewer's eyes or their cameras or anything, so it won't sort of affect the images like what it's doing at the moment. And I'll paint that bit of wood black, and I'll have the name of the layout and details and descriptions on there as well, which I think would be quite nice. And also it'll provide a perfect mounting point for a little idea that I'm sort of toying around with at the moment. As you can see, the main bracket for the lights is actually silver, which doesn't sort of blend in with the black borders that I've got on the layout, but I thought of a clever way to disguise that, and my idea is to get a camo net that will attach to that bit of timber that I've just mentioned, and then attach to the top of the back scene there, and it'll give it sort of more of a military sort of feel. Now the lights were a bit more expensive than the bracket lights I was intentionally looking at, which we'll come on to in a moment when we flip the baseboard over, but the bonuses of having these lights, which I again will come on to in a minute, really is worth every penny I sort of paid for them. And the great thing is you get all different shapes and sizes of these, so you can add extra lighting for certain areas on the layout in the future if I need it. But at the moment these two are just perfect. But this is not the only bit of lighting that I've added to the layout recently. I've also added some scenic lighting. So if I just turn off the lights at the moment, and hopefully you will see there's a warm orange glow coming from the farmyard, and another sort of warm orangey red glow coming from the entrance to the trench. So without further ado, we will zoom in and take a closer look. So here's a closer look at the farmyard, and as you can see we now have an operating campfire. If I just turn on the back scene lights a moment, so the camera can adjust and hopefully see the campfire a bit better there. It really does sit in there quite well. It's absolutely tiny. But you've got the effect of like the burning logs on there and the embers, and also it's got a lovely little stone border. Now the idea behind that little stone border, I've got a great little cunning plan, because as you can see it's actually in the farmyard there with the demolished farm building, and that little border will be blended in with mud, so it makes it a bit less noticeable. But the idea is that some soldiers created this sort of campfire to keep warm at night, What they've done is they've managed to get a load of the bricks from the demolished farmyard building there. I will plan to add a bigger pile of rubble there at a later date. And some of the bricks from that pile of rubble have been used to create the border for this campfire. Now the campfire and the light effect at the other end of the layout, which is actually a barrel fire, we'll take a closer look at that in a moment, are from a company called Railroom Electronics. Now they're a great little company and they specialise in wiring and electronics and very sort of handy tools you need for everyday tools for building model railways. And I picked these up at the RailX show in Taunton RailX. And the chap that runs the display or the store is a really great bloke. I mentioned to him I've not done any sort of wiring like this at any point in the past, and he explained to me all the ins and outs of all these products and how simplistic it is to get going, and true to his word, they really are. The great thing about these, they run on LEDs, but they have the resistor pre-wired in, so you don't need to worry about soldering a little sort of resistor to these. They're all ready to go. And all you just need to do is get a bit of extra wiring and a couple of adapters and a wall plug, which is what I've done. And they really do give that extra effect to the layout. I'll put a link to his website because you can purchase these online in the description below. Highly recommend it. So yeah, all very simplistic. And of course with these lights, as you saw with the main layout lights off, they really do give a lovely effect for night running. Especially considering that the majority of locomotives that are operating on the layout have operational headlamps. And doing research about trench railways and other bits and pieces, most operations on these trench railways were run at night. So these little sort of lighting effects do give a bit more realism for night running, which is really nice. So without further ado, we're just going to pan the camera around and take a closer look at the barrel, which is at the other end of the layout. So here's a closer look at the burning oil drum, and as you can see it's positioned right at the entrance to the trench. This is so it gives the effect that soldiers that are operating in the trench have somewhere to get a bit of warmth on the cold nights. Like the fire, it has a warm flickering glow to it, although this one is a bit more red as it sort of simulates the effect of the metal of the drum where it's been heated up by the burning wood inside. Now I must admit I did do a bit more research before purchasing this light than any of the other lights on the layout. Not really because on how it operated, but whether or not these type of oil drums were around during the Great War. And the answer to my question came from a very unlikely place. In fact, it was the very same video that one of the videos that inspired me to create a trench railway, and it shows some American troop trains in operation during the Great War. And a supply train goes rushing by in one shot, loaded with soldiers, ammo crates, and then at the back of the train is a wagon loaded with oil drums. So that was all I needed to do to sort of prompt me to get around to purchasing this and adding it on the layout. While I was at it as well, I've also purchased a number of just decorative oil drums that will at some point be mounted on the back of one of the supply trains. So, without further ado, I'm going to flip the board over now and we will take a closer look at the wiring that's needed to get all of these lights in operation. So here's a look at the wiring system on the underside of the baseboard. And I apologise for the mess. This masking tape is only temporary for the time being. It seems to be holding up well, but I hope to sort of arrange it and make it a bit more neat. As some of you know, with wiring on your layer, it could easily get out of hand. And at the moment, this is the most amount of sort of wiring I've done for decorative lighting on any layout. So it is a bit of a mess at the moment, but I do plan to sort of neaten this up at a later date. First off, there are actually two systems here. The first is to operate the barrel and the campfire, which is located here, and then the big chunky sort of adapter in the centre there, that is actually for the decorative lighting, the display lighting, which lights up the whole layout. So we'll start off with the camp and the barrel fire, and this is achieved by this little socket up here, which comes with a little, you've got to get a wall adapter. Again, I'll put a link to the provider of all this wiring in the description below. And basically, you've got a wall transformer here that plugs into this little socket. And then from this, I've splitted off 4 wires. So the 2 red wires come off of this side, and the 2 black wires come off of this side. So you can see there's a red and black wire here underneath this masking tape which leads to the campfire, and then on the other side another red and black wire which leads to the barrel fire at the other end of the layout along the bottom of the baseboard there. I've put in a couple of connectors there. There's a connector just by the point mechanism on the left there. Just get a bit of dowel there. There, that one there, which is just a simple screw sort of connection at the moment, as I don't have a soldering iron to hand. And basically that connects those wires together, which allowed me to extend it to reach the far side of the layout there. Now the lighting for the layout itself is achieved by this adapter power supply in the middle of the layout here, and this you have to buy separately. All the lights that I've used you have to buy all the little power supplies separately, so I had to buy the wall plug separately and this sort of adapter separately as well. So the wall power supply plugs in the top there, and then it obviously connects to this adapter here. Now this is like a plug port, and it has 9 sockets in it, and it allows you to connect these little plugs, which of course connect to the lights on top of the layout. Now the great thing is those bar lights are not the only ones available. You can get disc lights as well, and also ones that are on brackets and other different shapes lighting, which is great, and you can run up to 9 on one supply here, which is great. So if you have a big layout, you can run a lot of lights and all different shapes and sizes, which is really, really good. The main reason for choosing this, of course, it allows me to unplug the 2 lights on the top of the layout. So I just simply unclip them there, and then pull the wires out through the hole, and basically I could then unscrew the whole top of the back scene with the bracket and all that, and remove it from the layout, and that allows me to get the layout up and down out of the loft. One of the reasons why I didn't go for a box layout is because quite simply I wouldn't have been able to get it up here up and down easily. So the idea of having this lights that I can unplug is a real help, and for moving it around, and of course getting it in the car as well. So when I want to just simply set it all up, all I just do is screw that big block of wood on top of the layout with the lights already mounted on it, just thread the little wires and the plugs through the holes drilled in the baseboard there, and then just connect it up to the socket there, and away we go. Another little good feature about it is on the wall plug itself, it actually has an on-off switch, so I can switch the lights on and off and create a day and night mode on the layout relatively easy. So that's a sort of a little bonus for this system as well. But in total, the lighting, the wall plug and that socket there cost about £50, which I think is a great deal really for what you get. And of course you could extend it and add more and more lighting to it with those 9 extra ports, so I highly recommend. So the second major change since the previous update is the start of the addition of mud to the layout. Now this is something I'm extremely pleased with, as this whole sort of technique was a bit of an experiment, but it's worked out extremely well. Now this mud effect, if I slowly start panning around, has been achieved by using none other than brown wood filler, which you could pick up in pots from any sort of good DIY store. I basically mixed it with a bit of PVA to make it a bit more sort of mouldable and spreadable, and also it sort of gives it a bit more of a stick to it, so it can stick better to the polystyrene and the wood on the layout. And I basically just spreaded it around with a glue spreader and my finger, and basically you can achieve this lovely rippled mud effect. And it really is perfect for creating mud. Not only is it easy to use and it sticks well, but also when it dries like it has here, you get a really sort of natural mud effect. And I'm not sure if you can see it, but just coming into the shot now with the trees on the right, there is actually a crater which has obviously been left from a sort of an artillery shell that's obviously landed in that area there and just destroyed that area. And around there I sort of flipped up little tiny chunks of this plaster, and you can really give the effect where sort of the land has sort of been spreaded by the blast, which is quite good, and I'm very pleased with that. Now also another sort of bonus to this plaster is you can actually dry brush it on. So I sort of used it a bit like paint and sort of dry brushed it, and you can see I've weathered down the trench walls here, so it gives a very sort of natural effect that mud has sort of obviously sort of dripped onto the boards, or it's been spreaded on by obviously blasts from artillery shells. And yeah, so you can really sort of weather down the wood. I've also done this side of the trench wall here as well, and we can see in a bit more detail here, there is actually a crater just coming into the shot there, and you can see it really does give a lovely effect. And at some point I am going to put a bit of realistic water in there as well. Now this area here, I'm going to have a bit more sort of static grass on here, but there's going to be quite a lot of patchy, muddy areas, and so this sort of effect really shines through. Now what I've done here on this side, which is different than the bit I've done around the artillery battery, is I've also put a very, very, very thin layer of PVA. I've just basically brushed it on top to sort of seal it all in. As I noticed that when you, especially around the edge of the craters, where you sort of give like the sort of the rough earth effect, it sort of can chip off and sort of turn a bit powdery. But I found that if you just put a very, very thin coat of PVA on there, it gives it a bit more of a natural sort of wet mud colour, which as you can see it's a bit sort of darker here. But also it stops that dust and any sort of bits peeling off, so it's rock solid. If I just tap the bottom here, you hear it's basically like the mud rock. It really is strong stuff. So that won't be going anywhere anytime soon, and I'm just over the moon with it. And one thing that I obviously had mentioned, that it was I was worried that I was going to have to paint this mud once it was all down, but the colour that it's dried is absolutely perfect, and it's better than I can ever have imagined. So yeah, let me know what you think in the description below. And of course, I ran out of the pot that I had. I only had sort of a medium-sized pot, but I used it all up on this these two areas alone. And of course, I will need to get another pot to do the rest of the scenic area, so just pan back round, which is of course around the actual yard itself, where all the vehicles and obviously all the equipment's going to be. Another reason for waiting for doing this area as well is because I need to complete some more of the vehicles, so it gives the effect that they're obviously sunk in as well. And as mentioned, dry brushing it as well means it's easy to weather up these tanks. So as you can see, we've got the Mark 1 tank here, which is obviously a bit too clean at the moment. So once all the mud's down, obviously I've got it all over the tracks and sort of left the track effect in the mud here. I will then get round to weathering all the vehicles with this mud to give it effect that they've obviously been working and operating in it for quite a while. So I've also been working on the Howitzer artillery battery, and as you can see, it's gained its first coat of khaki green. Now I've gone on quite light with this to sort of give it sort of a sun bleached effect to show that it's been standing there for quite a while. And I plan to go over it with weathering powders and washes to give it a bit of dirt and sort of grease and grime, especially around sort of all the mechanisms on there, to show how well used it's been. Another thing I've got to do on it, as you can see, it's still showing white on the ballast box on the front, which sort of weighs it down to stop it from toppling over. I plan to add a tarp sheet to that to sort of cover it up, as there's plenty of pictures of these sort of artillery in operation in the fields, with sort of either ballast in there or sort of a tarp in there, which obviously would be dragged over the top of the howitzer when it's not in action. Now just to the left, I've started doing a bit of scenery in this area in the form of spent shell cases. Now this is again something I'm very, very pleased with, and something very, very easy and cheap to achieve. Like the trench walls, I've done a bit of salvaging, and basically that is just plain old drink straws that have been cut to size. I've super glued them into a random pile on top of a bit of an old cereal box, and then I've sprayed them silver, or well, not silver, sort of a matte grey. And basically they will be weathered down again, so they're more brown, sort of a rusty effect, as that's just the primer grey at the moment. And basically it gives the effect that the shell's been spat out by the artillery and basically just chucked to one side in the corner there. And then of course I plan to again use drink straws to create new shells that obviously arrive by the railway, and obviously there'll be piles of them to the right of the battery there, ready for loading. So I guess that's all for this update. Once again, thank you ever so much for watching, and of course feel free to comment on what you think of the progress so far. As you know, the first deadline for the displaying of this layout is fast approaching, which is of course the Western Model Railway exhibition in January, as mentioned in the previous update, which I'm very much looking forward to. But as you can see, I'm starting to get a bit nervous now, as of course that deadline is fast approaching. Now, what's also quite exciting as well is I've been in contact with other shows, or other shows have got in contact with me about displaying this layout potentially at a number of other shows next year as well. So I'm really, really excited about that. I'll go through a few of them now. I've got in contact with the Gartel Light Railway for their model railway exhibition, and they're looking forward to hopefully welcoming the layout there for their February show. I've also been contacted by the Avon Valley Railway, which are putting on a new Models and Miniatures event next year to display the layout there for 2 days, which will be quite exciting as well. Another show that I've also been invited to is the Compton Dundo Small and Delightful exhibition, which is taking place in May. I'm really looking forward to that, as that is a narrow gauge show, so that's something to look forward to as well. I've also been asked by the WW1 Scale Society to display as part of their group at the Exeter show. So I've got to try to do a bit of research on that one, and hopefully I might be able to attend that show as well. And then Rail Wales. I'm in talks with Rail Wales at the moment to hopefully get the layout in there for their August show. And then on top of that, I've just received an invite quite recently from the Taunton Rail-X, which, as you know, I visited back last month. And basically they contacted me, which was really, really exciting. They saw a picture posted on Facebook of the layout. And yeah, I'm really, really looking forward to displaying at that show. It was my first visit to their show last month, and I was blown away by how well set up it was, and the sheer variety of layouts. And of course, there is also a 009 section there, which is really, really great. And I look forward to hopefully displaying the layout there next year as well. Of course, I'll keep you all up to date on more progress on those shows as and when I have some more information. But I'm very, very pleased that that people are actually getting in contact for the layout to be displayed at shows, which is amazing, because I'm used to obviously asking around, but to be asked is really something quite special. So thank you ever so much, guys. But anyway, that's all for this update, and hopefully the next update will be not too far away. So this has been SDJR Senef88 speaking, and thanks for watching.